States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois now is in session. The Honorable Judge Julius J. Hoffman presiding.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, good morning.
69, CR 180, the United States of America versus David Dellinger et al. For trial.
Are proud to welcome a great political gathering of Americans who come here to shape the future of a nation. And as long as I'm mayor of this town, there'll be law and order in Chicago.
Mr. Schultz, representing the government.
The government, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, will prove in this case an overall plan of the 8 defendants to encourage numerous people to come to the city of Chicago during the Democratic National Convention, which was held from August 26th through August 29th, 1968. They planned to bring these people into Chicago to create a situation where these people would riot. The government will prove that David Dellinger...
Well, I was described as an anti-war activist or a pacifist leader. And today I'm called a peace activist. But I don't like any of those terms because I think you can't have peace without justice.
The defendant, Renard Davis.
I came out of a very conservative family that very much believed in American values. I would say I was a full-time activist, you know, with a passion to end the war in Vietnam.
Next to him, Thomas Hayden, who is standing.
Who is the last defendant you named?
Mr. Hayden.
The one that shook his fist in the direction of the jury?
That's my customary greeting, Your Honor.
It may be your customary greeting, but we do not allow shaking of fists in this courtroom.
It implied no disrespect to the jury. It is my customary greeting.
Regardless of what it implies, sir, there will be no fist shaking. And I caution you not to repeat it.
I began as a innocent enough, idealistic reformer, a student editor, a person that believed in civil rights. I had been a founder and an early president of Students for Democratic Society.
May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes, Mr. Schultz, yes.
In promoting and encouraging this riot, the defendants Dellinger, Davis, and Hayden joined with 5 other defendants to create the riots in Chicago during the convention. The defendant, Abbott Hoffman.
The jury is directed to disregard the kiss thrown by the defendant, Hoffman. And the defendant is directed not to do that sort of thing again.
But here we were, grown up in the late 50s with the whole idea of material success, the designer brain mentality. We could have credit cards if we wanted. We could have good paying jobs. We didn't have to worry about keeping up with Mr. Jones because we were Mr. Jones. And we said no to that primetime culture. We just said, chuck it. We just said it's boring, it's spiritually unrewarding, and it's unjust for people too poor to participate in it. Now, they couldn't understand that at all.
And with him, a man named Jerry Rubin.
I was writing books at the time. I was a political activist. My job, full-time, was inspiring young people to think for themselves, to resist authority, and to create a new social order in the United States. That's how I saw myself.
These men called themselves leaders of the Yippies. 2 more of these individuals are Lee Weiner.
I had a master's degree in sociology, and I was just about finished with my doctorate in sociology. Being nothing more than a nice middle-class Jewish boy doing what his parents grew him up to be, which is speaking for himself and for helping other people secure their rights.
And John Freunds.
I was an assistant professor of chemistry at the University of Oregon. At the same time, I was a political activist, a social activist.
And the 8th person, the last person who joined, is a man named Bobby Seale.
Huey P. Newton and I created and founded an organization called the Black Panther Party. We talk about full employment for our people, a power to determine our own destiny, our own black community.
The government will prove that defendants Dellinger, Davis, Hayden, Hoffman, Rubin, and Seale traveled across state lines to Chicago with intent to organize, to incite, and to promote a riot. And the government will prove that defendant Freunds and Weiner taught and demonstrated to other people the use and making of incendiary devices to be used to further this disorder. The government will prove each of these defendants guilty as charged. Thank you.
Voices of angry protest are heard throughout the land, crying for all manner of freedoms.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, my name is William Kunstler. I'm an attorney from the city of New York, and I'm one of the attorneys on this case. We hope to prove before you that this prosecution, which you are hearing, is the result of two motives on the part of the government.
Objection. Is there any motives of prosecution, if the court please?
Your Honor, it is a proper defense to show motive.
I sustain the objection. You may speak to the guilt or innocence of your clients, not to the motive of the government.
Your Honor, I'd always thought that to show motive...
I sustain the objection, regardless of what you have always thought, Mr. Constable.
The evidence will show that the defendants, like many other citizens of the United States, came to protest in the finest American tradition. They came to Chicago to protest the continuation of this bloody and unjustified war. The evidence will show that there were forces in this city and in the national government who are absolutely determined to prevent this type of protest. What actually happened in the streets of Chicago was not a riot caused by demonstrators, but a riot engineered by the police. Before you is a classic example of government against people, of their rights violated by billy clubs. We will demonstrate that free speech died here in the streets under those clubs, and that the bodies of the demonstrators were sacrifices to its death.
Objection, Your Honor.
I sustain the objection. I direct the jury to disregard the last statement of the counsel for the defense.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Is there any other defense lawyer who wishes to make an opening statement? I take it that you're standing there means yes, you do, Mr. Wineglass.
Yes, Your Honor, that is correct. If Your Honor, please. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, Mr. Kunstler indicated that persons who came to Chicago felt a moral anguish at what they considered to be wrongful conduct of this country. There was another group of people who came to Chicago, not for the purpose of protesting, but for the purpose of showing the public and the leaders and the rulers of this country that there was emerging a new culture. This group, generally called Yippies, came here for a conclave to be known as the Festival of Life. They had invited a number of rock bands relevant to the youth culture. I do not ask you to accept or like or agree with any of the speeches which my clients might have given.
Your Honor, I object. Counsel argues the case. It is improper.
I sustain the objection.
So I ask you to keep an open mind and to await before making your judgment. Thank you.
Does any other defense lawyer wish to make an opening statement? Just a minute, sir. Who is your lawyer?
Charles R. Gary. Bobby Seale was in jail pending a murder trial in Connecticut where he was supposed to be a defendant and which later exonerated him.
Now, Bobby's lawyer is Charles Gary, and Charles was having a medical operation at the time.
The man had been cut open. I mean, how is he going to come to trial? All we needed was a little postponement, you know what I mean? Like 2, 3, 4 weeks or something like this here. The judge wasn't going to do that later for that.
Mr. Kunstler, do you represent Mr. Seale?
No, Your Honor. As far as Mr. Seale has indicated to me that because of the absence of Charles R. Gary...
have you filed his appearance?
I have filed an appearance for Mr. Seale, yes.
All right. I will permit you to make another opening statement on behalf of Mr. Seale, if you like. I will not permit a party in the case to...
Your Honor, I cannot compromise Mr. Seale's position.
I don't ask you to compromise it, sir. But I will not permit him to address the jury with his very competent lawyer standing there.
At a meeting on August 8, 1968, who said what?
Mr. Hoffman said he wanted the mayor to grant a permit for use of Lincoln Park. they wanted to use the park to sleep in. I said that the mayor had no authority over the park district.
Now calling your attention to August 21st, 1968. What brought you to the courtroom of Judge William Lynch?
There was a lawsuit filed by the National Mobilization Committee to End the War and by Mr. Rennie Davis, Tom Hayden, and others against the city of Chicago. I said that the city was predisposed to issue a permit for a march if Mr. Davis was willing to accept a reasonable proposal.
What happened then?
Well, Mr. Davis said that he wanted to meet within eyesight of the amphitheater. I pointed out no one was permitted in that area because of security precautions for the convention. He said if the city wants to avoid violence, you should take all the police and guardsmen away from the amphitheater, that it was his experience that the police actually caused violence. He also said that his members couldn't really be housed in hotel accommodations, that many of them didn't have money. He said that if the city doesn't give us the park, there will be tens of thousands of people without a place to stay. And they will go into the parks, and the police will drive them out, and there'll be disorder, tear gas, mace, billy clubs.
With respect to the law which does not permit staying in the park beyond 11, was that requirement waived for the Boy Scouts?
Apparently, yes.
But don't you think it would have been wiser to let the kids sleep in the park?
I was told by Abby Hoffman that during the convention there would be 500,000 young people attending the Festival of Life. Mr. Rubin said they'd be holding classes in defense against the police. Abby Hoffman said he was prepared to tear up our town, and that if we were smart, we the city, we would give them $100,000. Or better still, give him the $100,000 and he would leave town.
I said 200,000.
His festival would include, he said, body painting, nude inns at the beaches, public fornication, discussion of the draft, and draft evasion.
Your Honor, at this time I would like to offer evidence with respect to the defendant Dellinger only.
Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, the testimony the witness is about to give is offered only with respect to the defendant Derringer.
I think Your Honor means Dellinger.
Dellinger, that's right.
Mr. Dillinger said we must issue a...
I'm going to get back to you, Mr. Witness. I mispronounced the defendant's name. You said Dillinger. It's Derringer. We were both wrong. You mean Mr. Derringer, do you not?
Dellinger said that it was necessary that we issue a permit for sleeping in Lincoln Park in order to minimize destruction.
Now, if my understanding is correct, all your meetings with Jerry and Abby took place in City Hall.
Your Honor, I object to the reference to these two little... to Abby and Jerry. Let's call the defendants by their proper names.
I agree.
Now, you testified in your meeting with Jerry Rubin and Abby Hoffman some mention of $100,000. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
Did you take that discussion seriously?
Yes, I most certainly did.
Now, in your meeting with Rennie and Tom...
Oh, Your Honor, here we go again. Another 29-year-old being Rennie, baby.
I object to that, Your Honor. Will you direct the jury to disregard the Rennie baby remark as unfounded?
If the United States attorney said that, I certainly do. Crowd the baby out of your minds. We're not dealing with babies here.
My mother, who's a Republican, now 75-year-old woman, sent me a 5-pound box of jelly beans.
Jelly beans!
All rise. The court is now in session.
On Sunday evening, I observed Jerry Rubin in Lincoln Park pointing at the police officers, and then he began to shout. He used some profanity.
If profane words were spoken, part of something an individual had said, I think it's appropriate in law that a witness so testify.
He says, look at these motherfucking pigs standing over here. Take off your guns and we'll fight you hand to hand.
I was assigned to follow Mr. Jerry Rubin.
During all this period, did you ever see him throw an object at another human being?
Wednesday.
Wednesday. He threw an object.
Yes, he threw a sweater.
At who?
At me.
I take it you were uninjured by the sweater.
Was dressed in a wash shirt, khaki pants, and gym shoes, sneakers.
Would you please relate what the defendant Davis said about civil disobedience and the Democratic National Convention?
He said there were going to be demonstrations and civil disobedience to disrupt the convention.
And neither mob violence nor police brutality have any place
So
in
the
America.
prosecution had the point of view that we were international revolutionaries, and they brought on a parade of policemen.
Among them were informants who penetrated our ranks, which wasn't very difficult to do since we were a very casual organization.
I submit to the court that the right of persons to meet, to assemble, and to discuss outstanding political social questions without fear of intimidation of police officers is paramount. And to allow undercover agents to attend the meetings and make reports is a violation of the First Amendment, of freedom of speech and assembly. For that reason, I ask that the officer's testimony be stricken.
Your Honor, I object to their motion.
We're opening a mail, and somebody opened the wrong envelope quickly.
And in it was some very green marijuana. Maybe about 4 ounces.
You approve of your client laughing while the court is making a decision?
I didn't hear, Your Honor. I was talking with Mr. Davis.
Well, you seem to be enjoying their laughter because you smiled yourself.
A smile is not forbidden in federal court, I think, Your Honor. I think I ought to put on record that Mr. Davis complimented Mr. Moran on making a good point.
Motion will be denied. And as long as you are putting things on the record, I think I will put on the record the posture of one of your clients. This is the United States District Court. Have a look at him lying down there like he's on the ground.
It may reflect his attitude toward what is going on in this court, Your Honor.
Oh, I think it does. I think it does reflect his attitude.
Then it is free speech.
And that attitude will be appropriately dealt with at a time. Now, can 3 marshals back there deal with those comments? Hey, man.
My assignment was an undercover investigator.
Did you in any way alter your physical appearance to conduct your assignment as an undercover investigator?
Yes, I did. I allowed my hair to grow long. I allowed myself to go without a shave for approximately 4 to 6 weeks. I purchased the attire of a motorcycle gang member, which is motorcycle boots, a black T-shirt, black Levi's, and a black leather vest. And I also rented a motorcycle.
On Monday in Lincoln Park, who did you meet with?
I was introduced to Abby Hoffman to be one of his bodyguards. Hoffman shook my hand and said he was glad to have me with him. I said to Hoffman that last night's confrontation was a pretty good one, and Hoffman said to me, they pushed us out of the park, but tonight we're going to hold the park.
What did you say when Hoffman told you this, please?
I told him he could count on me in every way possible in helping him, doing my best to keep him from being arrested.
Where'd you go then?
Tom Hayden had been arrested, and a march was formed to go to police headquarters to free Hayden. I was introduced by Jerry Rubin as his personal bodyguard, and he was told I could be trusted. Rubin said that there's too many pigs here. Let's go to the Hilton. So we went north of Michigan Avenue. When the march was midpoint past the Logan statue, the crowd broke and ran up the statue screaming, take the hill. They climbed the statue and displayed the Viet Cong flag, the red flag, and the black flag. Rubin said that this was better than Iwo Jima. I saw Rennie Davis with a microphone saying, hold the statue, don't let the pigs move you out. Rubin said, we've got to do more to keep the crowd active. We want them in the park for the Bobby Seale speech.
I object on the grounds that my lawyer is not here. You know my lawyer is not here, Your Honor, and I want my lawyer here when he mentions my name and testifies against me.
Ask him to sit down, Mr. Marshall.
Sit down, Mr. Seale.
Your Honor, this little episode for the benefit of the jury is intended simply to misconstrue the fact that this man originally had 4 lawyers to begin with.
In the speech, Bobby Seale said that the time for singing "We Shall Overcome" is past, and now is the time to act, to go out and buy a .357 Magnum and a .45 and kill the pigs. Reuben began to yell, "Kill the pigs, kill the cops." And the man with the plastic bag said to Reuben, "I'm going to fill this bag with human shit and throw it at the pigs." And Reuben laughed and said, "Good, it'll be good food for the pigs."
Thank you, Mr. Pearson. No further questions, Your Honor.
When you heard Jerry Rubin speak, was there any change in the mood of the assemblage?
Not that I noticed.
Did the group become violent in any way?
No, sir.
Now, concerning Mr. Seale's speech, was not the only reference to killing the pigs when he talked about self-defense against an unjust attack? Isn't that the context?
That's what you said, Mr. Wineglass. That's not what I have said.
The problem with the trial from our point of view was that we were being diverted from our primary job. Our primary job was to organize anti-war activities.
And we wanted to participate very seriously in the Vietnam moratorium.
It may have been the largest nationwide turnout of Americans against any war in American history.
Morning, troops.
All rise. The court is now in session. The Honorable Judge Julius J. Hoffman presiding.
Your Honor, we have made a motion for the suspension of the trial for tomorrow, which is being declared a day called Vietnam Moratorium. These defendants came to Chicago to protest this brutal imperialistic war. They feel they are being prosecuted for doing so. They think it very fitting for them to be permitted to join the millions of countrymen who desire the same thing.
Your Honor, there's been some evidence presented that these men took part in a cynical plan to use the tragic issue of the war to tear down the formal structure of the government of the United States. Now, many of us feel the tragedy of war, especially some of us who have fought in one, and that they should now ask to join with maybe a sincere effort.
Your Honor, I think these personal attacks of the defendants are uncalled for. I think they are making a fervent request to protest the deaths of thousands, millions of innocent people whose lives have been corrupted and prevented by the utter horror that goes on in your name and in my name.
Not in my name.
It is in your name, too. In the name of the United States.
You just include yourself. Don't join me with you, goodness. Defendant's motion for an adjournment will be denied.
Wow! Good God, y'all! What is it good for? Absolutely! Let's say it again!
The names of those who died in the war this week are Mark King, Thomas Diaz, Tron T. Line, John Cohen, Lee Hu, Richard Washington, Krong Bach, Alan Peterson, Tron Von Duke, Roger Briansky.
Hey, come on. Knock it off.
Sir. Mr. Hoffman, we are observing the moratorium.
I'm Judge Hoffman, sir.
I believe in equality, sir, so I prefer to call people Mr. or by their first name.
Sit down.
We propose that we observe a moment's silence. Court, please. I would like the marshal to take this man into custody. We only wanted a moment of silence. I object to this man speaking out in court.
You needn't object. I forbid him to disrupt the proceedings, and I note for the record that his name is,
David Dellinger is my name, sir.
The name of this man who has attempted to disrupt proceedings is David Dellinger, and the record will clearly indicate that, Mr. Reporter. And I direct him and all the others not to repeat such occurrences.
Your Honor, I want to object to Mr. Perran's yelling in the presence of the jury. Your Honor has admonished counsel on defense fence for yelling.
Your Honor, this is outrageous. This man is a mouthpiece. I just look at him wearing an armband like his clients. For any lawyer to come into a courtroom and have no respect for the court. The government protests his attitude, and would like to move the court to make note of his conduct.
Your Honor, I think the temper and the tone of voice and the expression on Mr. Ferrand's face tells more than any picture could tell.
Of my contempt for Mr.
To call another attorney a mouthpiece, and for Your Honor to not open his mouth and say this is not to be done in this court, I think violates the sanctity of this court. It is a word that Your Honor knows is contemptuous and contumacious.
Don't tell me what I know.
I am wearing an armband in memoriam to the dead, which is no disgrace in this country. I want him admonished.
Did you say you wanted to admonish me?
I want you to admonish him.
Let the record show I do not admonish the United States attorney because he has properly represented his client, the United States of America.
To call another attorney a mouthpiece? Are you turning down my request? After this disgraceful episode, you are not going to say anything?
I not only turn it down, I ignore it.
That speaks louder than words.
Sir, you are a lawyer in the United States District Court permitting your client to stand up in the presence of the jury and disrupt these proceedings. I do not know how to characterize it.
No, we do not permit our clients. They are free, independent human beings who have been brought by the government into this courtroom.
That is right. They are free. But they will conform to the directions of the court here, sir.
Mr. Davis said there would be no way to deal logically or rationally with the Chicago police, that they were the most belligerent, unthinking law enforcement agency, and that there was no hope of avoiding a confrontation with the Chicago police. He said that if the demonstrators tried to sleep in the park, they could expect to be surrounded by the police, and that they should form separate groups and break out of the park and go into the city. And in his own words, tie it up and bust it up. If an arrest situation commenced, Mr. Davis said, we just riot.
Calling your attention to an earlier afternoon in Lincoln Park, August 24th. What was going on there?
25 or 30 people lined up side by side in rows of 5 or 6 so that they all faced in the same direction. Then each row linked arms and they began to chant something to synchronized foot movements. Mr. Hayden told the group that this snake dance formation was the same type the Japanese students used to precipitate riots in Japan in 1960. He said that by getting people together in this formation, it aroused their emotions and was very good for breaking through police lines and moving people in the event of a riot situation.
Did you see any of the defendants directing those snake dances and those karate techniques?
Objection. Leading.
I don't believe it's leading. I overrule the objection. You may answer, sir.
Mr. Hoffman was leading one of those groups.
Do you describe your role as a paid informer?
No.
Do you recall making a lengthy statement to the FBI? And in it, what did you say your employer said to you?
He said, would you object to infiltrating SDS and National Mobilization in order to get stories pertinent to the Democratic National Convention? I said I would.
Your Honor, there's something happening. I don't understand what's happening, except that the marshals are asking people to leave.
I know nothing about it.
Ladies and gentlemen, I will not have talking, finger-waving, or any distractions. Do I make myself clear? I think there's a bit of racism involved myself.
Your Honor, may the records show that a number of the marshals are black people. This is our daily exercise for getting stories in the newspapers. It's just so utterly ridiculous.
All I get from your clients constantly is a laugh. Just this second, they sit there and laugh at a judge of the highest trial court in the United States.
I don't want to die. I don't want to be anybody's martyr. But, to my wife, let my kids know that I just stood up for some human justice.
There is a motion here of Defendant Bobby Seale to be permitted to defend himself.
I will hear you, Mr. Seale.
I want to present this motion on behalf of myself. I am not a lawyer, but I do know that I, as one of the defendants, have a right to defend myself.
So, I, Bobby Seale, move the court as follows. Because I am denied the lawyer of my choice, Charles R. Gary, I am forced to be my own counsel and to defend myself. I require my release from custody so I can interview necessary witnesses, do the necessary investigating, and all other things that being in custody makes impossible. Cross-examine witnesses, make all necessary motions, and prove my innocence.
Have you finished, sir?
Yes.
Your Honor, the other defendants would like to join in this motion. I'd like to call Your Honor's attention to Adams versus the United States, where the Supreme Court said, the Constitution does not force a lawyer on a defendant. Mr. Seal filed